Hi everyone, this is Karak with Angry Centaur Gaming, and this is my final verdict on The Crew. Though heavily suggested that I need at least 40 hours and 1 full week of sales before I could speak about the game, I find that when you're the only one on the teeter-totter of suck, there's just one reason to try to get the thing to move again, so you can get the hell off. So enough is enough. The game's available right now, which means people need to know right now how it is. It's not fucking rocket science. I am Karak, this game is The Crew, and this is my review. Graphics are up first. So not much have changed since my impressions videos. Sometimes while driving the countryside, the game can hit you right in the nostalgias, and then just as you're feeling all warm and fuzzy, the oddness of the world around you seeps in. Vehicles with solid gray windows all around, rear view mirrors that flicker in and out in first person mode, trees that flicker like before and after pictures on a weightlifter forum, and pop in at an almost constant pace. At times the game feels like it's a junkyard jalopy just held together with wire and happy thoughts and past generation stylings. The game does run at 30 frames per second for the most part, and at a resolution of 1080p, so it's strange to me that these issues have crept into the final code. At the same time, while in a full race screaming down the center of a busy street or racing full speed up the snowy mountains of a US state, the game gets shockingly close to great looking. But, like me with a fine woman, it doesn't last long and looks awkward as hell even at its best moments. Hey, the main character looks exactly like Gordon Freeman from Half-Life, so in a way you have one cool thing. Or a similarity that is just downright mean. One of the two. Overall, I'd say okay, but with wild monkey-like swings between great and what the fuck. Sound, music, and voice. Not much has changed here. The sounds within the game, engines, crashes, ambient traffic, and the screech of a guardrail as you do 1 full year's worth of salary damage to the side of your car all actually sound great. A few tinny sounds do leak into the mix here and there and bring down the overall package just a bit, but despite that, the game sounds rather good, especially if you have the stereo system to support it or a nice pair of stereo headphones. Music. You know, this is the most subjective part of almost any review, and here in The Crew you have multiple radio stations to pick from, but honestly I just wasn't a fan of almost all of them, which leads the radio dial more like a radio crescent moon, with half or less of the stations probably never getting turned back on. When the music is good, it's actually fairly good and mixed with the scenery to really solidify the experience, but then when it's bad, it does the same thing in the opposite direction, leaving you wondering why circus music is playing while you're epically climbing Pikes Peak and if Doink the Clown is hiding in the miniature backseat of your sports car. Voice. By the gods, man, it's not just the entire plot and the voices that seem written to mimic what middle-aged people think sounds cool, it's that any 30-year-old or older person should have known it's not cool. It's just bad writing and bad vocal direction. Though the main character is actually passable, and that's most likely because that little-known Troy Baker does the voice, and yet even he sounds a bit tired, like he was asked to show up and could not find any reason to say no, or like doing that favor for a friend when you know it's going to come back to bite you in the ass. The rest of them just reek of trying too hard to be Fast and the Furious, and somehow ending up being a cross between the antics of bad undercover cops and a kid trying to fit in at a party. Every time someone speaks, you suddenly feel like it's your job to get out of the cutscene and end it as quickly as possible. It's not Fast and the Furious video game bad, but it's close. That's not to say sometimes they don't pull it off. It's just that when they do, it just reminds you how average or poor everything else when it comes to voice is in the game. Up next is the big dog as always. It's the main thing that matters, it's gameplay. Well, what can I say? You're still driving around awkwardly in a stop-and-pop gameplay environment that gives no accounting for pacing and throws so much random shit at you that it dawns on you in less than 1 hour. This game was simply an excuse to get every single gameplay element of Assassin's Creed into a racing game. The HUD is a thing of monstrous proportions, with some menu elements, like, say, looking at your car in the map, laced with massive boxes effectively cutting your view off of anything remotely near your car as you fiddle with the zoom button. Imagine using your entire fucking hand to point at something on a map, just slapping your sweaty palm into the center of the map and hoping people around you can figure out exactly what you're pointing at. Its design is terrible, and that poor execution is seen in the cumbersome menus for finding the different missions and how you go about trying to lock onto that little fucking rectangle in a space where you want to fast travel or set a marker for. Watch carefully, because if you're not careful, the chance you will fast travel to the ass end of an apple orchard or on the wrong side of a building is about 50-50. At least you can turn your HUD off, which is nice, and driving through the city without the HUD is actually one of the better moments of the game. Luckily, even at 30 frames per second, the cars actually handle fairly well. Sadly, there's not a very great many of them, but they do have a number of upgrades. Not a high number, and certainly nothing shockingly surprising, but it's got a competent upgrade schedule. When you win races, you unlock parts for your car, and a strange loser takes his own car apart and throws you pieces of it gameplay idea. It's just odd, more so because it's convoluted for no reason, because you can just go and buy some parts and upgrade packages that are like level upgrades, and for some reason that also includes the basic handling of your car, which means your car will handle like shit until you level up, which not only isn't realistic at all, it's now suddenly an RPG where your Detroit muscle car is a character class, and your new ECU is like a +2 to dexterity. From the tuners to the upgrade pass, everything is more confusing than it has to be, with one part of the game holding your hand like a child in an amusement park, and then the next launching the child like a trebuchet into the Detroit Auto Show and telling them to come back with a good racer. Like, the story is just poorly paced and cumbersome as hell. Now, that's not to say everything in the game is bad. Going from single-player mission to single-player mission might be a bit not drivey, but once you get there, you bet you will be driving. Even if the game pretends you might kill someone or do something else, it's just all an excuse to drive, and the driving at times is good, with some stellar long-distance races for more than an hour. And these will have you booking like a grease pig down a series of mountains and sponsored racers, and the next time you're taking your own vehicle and drag racing somewhere in the guts of an old steel-working American city. Some of those races are great and keep you at the edge of your seat and offer real challenge and reward for winning. Others are hilariously poor affairs, like a drag race that I just don't think it was possible for me to lose no matter what I was going to be driving. And at other times you're smashing into other drivers and yelling sorry out your windows. You launch across a ridgeline in the hopes that your shortcut you've mapped still hits a checkpoint and also doesn't end in a small lake bed or behind the almost countless guardrails that coat the world like a guardrail breeding system's been programmed into the game. The one nice thing is the game is fairly massive, and so the world map is just insane. So I could see if someone buys it just to try the streets and not do any of the missions, they would be looking at many hours of driving, and to be honest, I could see that being a legitimate excuse to get the game, because the missions and campaign simply aren't. Multiplayer's up next. You know, it needs a patch. It's a crotchety old cat lady right now with almost no rhyme or reason to the level of success you're going to see connecting to someone else. If it does connect, you're going to jump into races and travel somewhat together, and it's great fun in the exploration mode, and the races with others can be some nail-biting experiences, but it's also where the game has some instability, and not just when connecting to the net. I had 4 freezes of the entire game that were unrecoverable right while racing with others. Traveling around and exploring the world and racing others is a really fun feeling at times, but it's also surprisingly barren. It's like inviting all your friends over for a party and they sit in the living room and you hang out in your bedroom and you just yell at each other through the wall. I've never had a close enough race in the longer races to feel like the other people I was with should have been included in the game at all. It's oddly disjointed, and maybe because of the size of the map, it's actually a hindrance. Fun factor, driving in free drive is fun. I won't begrudge anyone their enjoyment of that. Exploring the truncated United States is going to be enjoyable from time to time for anyone. However, this game is a cockblock for itself. Every time it finds a winning move, it gets in its own way and shoots itself down. For free drive, there are the graphics issues and the fact that the main missions are terribly boring. For the upgrade path, there is microtransactions and the confusion of the RPG system. For sound, there is the music. And for everything else, there is the multiplayer not working right now. And that is what this review is based on right fucking now, and if you should spend your money on it right now. Alright, so what does the crew get right? It has a good number of things you can do across the world, and the world is really large. When driving in free drive, the game actually looks fairly good as long as you don't look super close. Sound is done very well and adds to the atmosphere of the game. What does the crew get wrong? Well, the world in the game itself just falls apart when you enter a mission, and when it falls apart, the first thing that goes is the fun. Graphics, pop-up, and issues can all be bothersome. Single player is actually fairly boring. Music channels are much more miss than hit, for me at least, and I think that'll be subjective. And the RPG elements could be cool, but they're handled so woefully as to be almost insulting to a race fan, or even an RPG fan. So as you know, I review games with a buy, wait for a sale, rent, or never talk about it again rating scale. This game is a wait for a sale. The game's about 30 to 40% fun with 50 to 60% filler or oddly paced running around, and I'm not sure that's enough. I do know one thing, the game reeks of being someone's idea of getting the typical Assassin's Creed and Far Cry 4 smorgasbord of activities into a game with no forethought or even afterthought of how to make a passable racing game while doing it. However, the free drive lifts this game up away from total disaster, and then just as you're thinking maybe for half price, you would notice the fucking microtransactions, and then you would also notice that multiplayer barely works. You reach over, gently give the game a middle finger, and load something else. After 17 plus hours, I was done and simply defeated, done completely, and I don't need to forcefully eat all of an apple to know the entire thing is going bad. If the multiplayer suddenly works, it will still be a wait for a sale. So that's it. If you like the video, hit like. If you disliked it, hit dislike. Thanks all, and peace out.